You just pressed play on the Last Breath Huntcast, home of the Huntroversy. We're here to entertain, educate, and engage. And in case you didn't know, you only live once. But if you do it right, once is enough. Don't waste it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode number 143 of the Last Breath Huntcast, presented by none other than Badlands Gear. Using the code LASTBREATH22BL30, tell your friends, tell your family, you can save 30% off on badlandsgear.com. Again, that code is LASTBREATH22BL30, all uppercase, no space. Very proud to be working with Badlands again for the 2022 year to provide you guys with that code and to be able to cover the world in approach camouflage. So, our next partner of our podcast before we get into our episode today, Underwarmer. Using the code LASTBREATH, space in between those words with a capital L and a capital B, you can get yourself $10 off a $12 product at underwarmer.com, which is a next-to-skin heated base layer system that will provide up to 12 hours of heat to your core when you're out in the field. I know that lots of the guys on the team here are going to be using one of those come this turkey season because the weather right now, frankly, looks pretty crappy. Finally, Outdoor Edge. Using the code LBTV25, all uppercase, no spaces, you can get yourself 25% off any product related to cutlery at OutdoorEdgeGear.com. So this is an episode that I've been wanting to record for a very long time now. The topic is let's meet John Hafner. He is my favorite wildlife photographer. He shoots everything from African game, plains game, big game here in the States, and his specialty is the wild turkey. So my hope is that on this podcast, not only do we get to learn more about who he is, but also get a better understanding of what the heck a professional outdoor photographer does on a day-to-day basis. So John is ready to go here, and we are going to go ahead and give him a call. Full disclosure, he's been sending me some turkey pictures throughout the course of the last couple weeks, and they are incredible. I can't wait to share those pictures with you guys. They're just completely on another level. So, giving him a call now. He'll be picking up here shortly, and we'll get to pick his brain.
Hey, Grant. How's it going?
Good, John. How you doing?
Doing well, man. Thank you.
Can you hear me loud and clear? I got you perfect. Okay, yep. Perfect. Well, thank you again for joining me over the phone today. I let the listeners know a little bit right on the front end that you are a professional photographer, but I won't spoil your introduction. Go ahead, tell everybody who you are and what you do for a living.
Yeah, sure. So my name is John Hafner. I'm a freelance photographer. My wife and I live just south of Missoula, Montana, in western Montana. I've been behind the camera for about 20 years. I shoot wildlife and commercial assignments for outdoor brands. When I'm not traveling and shooting commercial work, I spend most of my free time chasing elk and deer and turkeys and other wildlife across Montana and throughout other places in the West. And I just got back from the turkey blind about 20 minutes ago. I shot 3,000 turkey pics right before this interview. So I might be...
just today, John?
I did, yeah. I've been up for about 6 hours, and I spent about 4.5 or 5 hours in the turkey blind this morning and took over 3,000 pics. So I will probably do this interview and edit turkey photos simultaneously, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, that's totally fine, man. My hope was to get a better idea of what you do for a living, and when you hear a number like 3,000, that's just like a very shell-shocking number to me. A good day with us behind the camera, and we're no level, of a person like your caliber, certainly, but a good day for us would be getting 40 or 50 good pictures I'd like to call keepers. So the fact that you took 3,000 this morning makes my brain want to explode and ask you a ton of questions just about that. But
sure, man. Film's cheap these days, so you shoot a lot, keep a little.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. That's a good strategy. And taking it back, I mean, are you a native from Montana? Have you grown up there pretty much your whole life, or you recently moved out there?
So I'm from Pennsylvania originally. My wife is from southwestern New York. We met at Penn State, and then I went to graduate school in 2000. We were married in May of 2000. We rolled the dice and landed on Montana for my graduate school. And much to our parents' shock and horror, about 3 weeks after we got married, we were in Missoula. We just
Hmm.
packed up and went out west and said, why not? We wanted to see the country. And I went to graduate school here in Missoula at the University of Montana. Got a master's degree in journalism. My plan was to be a writer who could photograph, and I guess I became a photographer who occasionally writes. Um, but that was, man, that was over 20 years ago. We wanted to stay. Missoula was pretty small back then. It has since boomed. Missoula's growing leaps and bounds. But we left in 2002, and then we came back briefly in '06. I worked for the Elk Foundation for a while, and then I took a job at Hoyt. And then we came back here 10 years ago, this past June. So we've been here 10 years. We kind of feel like we're native because this is the third time we've lived here. And Lord willing, we've dropped anchor. I hope we can stay. We love it here. But yeah, we're from back east, but we're Montana transplants. But we've been here, well over a decade over the course of 3 stays, and just love Montana living and love living out here. It's great.
Sure. So just doing a little bit of math in my head here. Are you in your low 40s then, John?
You're gonna make me divulge my age, huh?
You don't have to. You can plead the
No,
fifth
man,
if you
it's
want
fine. I'm just kidding.
to.
I turned 46 last January.
Whoa. Well, to
And
be
some days, excuse me, some days I feel like I'm 26, like today, just rocking. Some days I feel like I'm 96, but today's one of those 26 days, so it's a good day.
that is good. You kind of answered a little bit of this first question I had for you, but if you took
Yeah,
us on a journey from your 18-year-old self to now and kind of filled in the gaps of what you didn't just discuss. So you went to, got your bachelor's degree, met your wife at Penn State,
right.
um,
Yep.
decided that the University of Montana out in Missoula was the place where you wanted to land for grad school.
We
And then,
thought so. Yep. Roll the
okay.
dice.
And
Yep.
then pick up after there. So you talked briefly about, your employment, but after you got that graduate school degree in journalism, what the heck did your career path look like, to bring you all the way to the point where you are now?
Yeah, sure, sure. I'll give you the kind of the 30,000 foot view. It's a long, boring story, but this is kind of how things went. It's kind of funny too. I was just talking to my wife earlier about this. Like, it kind of started, and it's still driven by turkeys, which is crazy. I'm definitely a turkey nerd. When I was in graduate school, we had to pick a thesis, for the master's program,
Hmm.
and faculty encouraged us to pick a topic that we'd be really excited about and focused on because it's a tough program to finish in 2 years. And there were maybe like 12 or 15 of us in the journalism school. It was a pretty small program, and I can remember all of my classmates picking topics that pertain to like government, politics, world affairs. I chose turkeys, right? The
Yeah.
token redneck, Pennsylvania redneck in the group, And for 2 years, I interviewed biologists and landowners and turkey hunters, and being non-native to Montana, turkeys were sort of a divisive political debate. There were folks that wanted to put some money behind them and release turkeys throughout the state, and the states that they had their hands full with pheasants, which are also non-native, and sage grouse and things. So I found out pretty quickly it was kind of a political topic anyway. And I spent 2 years knocking on doors and talking to folks and photographing turkeys and turkey hunting, and did a thesis, part of which was published in Turkey and Turkey Hunting magazine a long time ago. And my
Okay.
first published photos were to the National Wild Turkey Federation. So they were my first client. That was back in the days when I shot slide film, and you had a roll of 36 exposures and you're counting down, click, click down to 36, or down to one, from 36, and being very careful with how many frames you shot. My wife
Sure.
and I didn't have two nickels to rub together in graduate school. My mom used to send me a few rolls of slide film every month to keep me going. So mornings like this morning where I shot 3,000 plus pics didn't happen back then,
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, my first published photos were to the National Wild Turkey Federation. I still work closely with those guys. They're great folks. They helped put me on the map, and they actually encouraged the PR director, a guy named Dodd Clifton at Realtree, to get a hold of me. They were looking for a marketing person, and so they offered me a job. And my first job out of graduate school was I landed it basically because of my photography, my published photos that Realtree saw,
Hmm.
and my degree in journalism. So we were in Columbus, Georgia for 5 years, where I learned the hunting industry. and just shook a lot of hands and got to network with a lot of great people in the outdoor industry during my 5 years at Realtree.
Sure.
Um, I was a 27-year-old kid with a six-figure budget to take outdoor writers on hunts. I mean, what could beat that?
Right. Yeah.
It was incredible. Realtree, Bill Jordan, and the whole family at Realtree, they were really good to me. They opened up a lot of doors for me. I'm very, very grateful for my 5 years at Realtree. And then from there, I did about a year as a photo editor at Bugle magazine at the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. We came back out to Missoula.
Okay.
We just missed the mountains. Wanted to get back out west. And we were here about a year, and the guys at Hoyt offered me a job very similar to what I had at Realtree, doing copywriting and photography and website editing and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
we moved from Missoula down to Salt Lake for about 5 years. And while I was at Hoyt, my freelance photography started taking off, and I had opportunities to travel and shoot campaigns for hunting brands and other outdoor brands, largely through my contacts I had made previously at Realtree. Um, so the 5 years in Utah were sort of this weird kind of limbo where I was still a company guy, loved working at Hoyt, great guys, had a great job there, but I was also really wanting to see if I could make it as a full-time freelance photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And after a few years of that, we realized that we probably could, and took the plunge and started doing full-time freelance work in Utah. And then in 2012, we decided that we were really missing Montana. We kind of set ourselves up in a place where we could afford to move back. And so yeah, by the grace of God, we found a great home on a few acres, and we've had turkeys in our backyard, and and I've had a couple magazine covers just from stuff in the backyard. So we moved back here in 2012 and haven't looked back.
That is a cool story. I was talking to Blake Van Tussenbrook, who's the marketing manager at Badlands Gear, last week on our podcast, and
Okay.
he had a very similar 20 to late 30s kind of time frame where he was kind of just a journeyman of a lot of different things, and he finally
Yeah.
landed in his niche very similarly to you. I thought that was pretty cool. I did not know, just from looking, because we follow you on Instagram, and I didn't know from,
Thanks.
looking through your photos and things like that you used to work with Realtree and with Hoyt. But it makes sense, all those networking opportunities that you took advantage of there, from those roles, how you're so well integrated and have, seemingly, at least from my 30,000 foot view of your Instagram and social platforms, that just you do a lot of different stuff. I know wild turkey's your specialty, your bread and butter, if you will, but there's a lot of different cool trips that I watch, like you and Chris Hood. I'm sure you know who that is. Go on.
Yeah, Chris does great work. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you guys are my top two guys, and
Thanks.
I really look highly of your photos and all your work that you do. But it's just really cool to watch you, I guess, from behind the camera, go to all these different places. So, kind of getting into it here, John. What do you think personally is your most rewarding or entertaining, fun, if you will, aspect of your career currently as a freelance photographer?
That's a good question, and I've been asked that a lot. It's really hard to pin down an answer for that. I think that for me, and hopefully this will answer the question, I've always just loved telling stories with a camera, whether it's the story of a brand, like a brand narrative for a client's
Mm-hmm.
ad campaign, or a hunt, or a safari in Africa, or whatever the case may be. I just love telling stories, and I guess that goes back to my background in journalism. Again, whether it's a hunt or um, like a humanitarian shoot. My business partner and I, Caleb White, 3 years ago, like right before COVID, we got to go to Uganda for the Tim Tebow Foundation and document a Christian home for kids with special needs that the Tim Tebow Foundation supported financially. And that was just a wonderful project. Just the people you get to meet, the places you get to go. God has really used the camera to open up some awesome doors for me. I just try to stumble through the
Sure.
doors that he opens. Honestly, there was my goal was always to be a self-employed photographer, but I had no real plan. I had no real step 1 through 5, and then it's going to happen. It was just by virtue of just working really, really hard, saying lots of prayers, and just trying to outwork everybody, and just go after every opportunity that came my way. And 20 years later, it's been great, man. I've been very, very blessed, from photographing Tim Tebow, Terry Bradshaw twice over the past couple of years. I think I've been to Africa 16 times, Argentina a few times, Belize, Costa Rica, New Zealand. I mean, if you'd have told 18-year-old me that had a $150 crappy little film camera back in the day, in a 75 to 300 millimeter kit zoom lens,
Mm-hmm.
my first camera kit was combined worth maybe $400. If you'd have told that kid all the things that would happen, all the doors that would open, he would have never believed it. It's been a great ride, man. I've been blessed abundantly, and I always want to think that my best work is yet to come. But to get back to your question, yeah, I think that it's about the people you meet, and about the doors that open, the experiences you have. I'll go into a photo shoot with kind of a shot list and kind of a preconceived notion of what I think is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And in most cases, it goes a different direction, and I get even better stuff than I would have envisioned. So I think just staying open to what happens on the shoot, and kind of being able to document and tell that story, and just connect with people, I think is a huge part of what makes a photographer successful.
Sure. I really like that answer. So essentially you're extremely flexible. You're fluid when you go on these shoots, and you've kind of got an idea of what could happen. If you're going on a tarpon fish, I've never been to do that, but I've watched a couple of those, Yeti documentaries, those Yeti shorts,
Yeah,
which I
yeah,
really enjoy on their YouTube channel. And, you're perceived like the money shot, we'll call it.
right.
You kind of have an idea what that looks like, but then you may just go down there, take a few thousand photos, and at the end of the time realize, oh shoot, I got this shot. It was incredible. It's not even something that I had envisioned for myself in my future during this photo shoot. So I
Yep.
really liked your response to that. But getting back to what you said, in high school, when did you decide that you were really, kind of pivoting here, really engulfed in photography? Because you mentioned your crappy little film camera is what you called it a
Yeah,
couple minutes ago.
right.
When
Yeah.
was your first? When did you get your first camera, and why? I guess were you drawn to it?
I think it was around my senior year in high school, maybe freshman year in college. I grew up with a dad and uncles who hunted and fished, and so I was around hunting and fishing from my earliest memories are sitting in a duck blind on Lake Erie with my dad. I was kind of in charge of the thermos and the shells, and I was kind of the gopher,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of kids. And I grew up around that, and then we turkey hunted. We hunted whitetails in the Appalachian Mountains, like in north central Pennsylvania. We had a cabin that we did every year. And when you're a kid in Pennsylvania, deer season it's a holiday. I hope it still is. I think the hunting culture has changed somewhat in PA over the years, but it was a big deal when I was a kid. We'd go down for 3 or 4 days, and you'd get the schools were closed. It was a holiday,
Sure.
and it was cool to be part of that culture as a kid. But yeah, when I was on those hunts with my dad and my uncles and stuff when I was real little, I would carry my dad's camera, and I was a horrible photographer. If anybody shot a deer or a turkey, I've got scrapbooks full of photos where I'm taking the pictures, and the deer's rack or the turkey's tail fan or my dad's head is cut off in the pictures. It's terrible. Didn't even like taking pictures, but I think something kind of changed when I was maybe 18, 19, something like that. And when I was a senior in college, I took a black and white darkroom class. And I think that's kind of what really made me put in my time, and learn the creative process, and learn the darkroom. And I think I just kind of fell in love with the creative process. And that's kind of what kind of motivated me to pivot. My background, my undergraduate degree is in psychology, with a minor in business, which is basically a communications degree.
Sure.
Basically pointless, really, is what it was.
Sure.
And I think that the photography class kind of helped me pivot from thinking I was going to be like a counselor or a therapist or something along those lines, to pursuing a master's in journalism, and doing photojournalism specifically. So I think that class when I was a senior definitely propelled my photography. And some days I'm like, man, where did 20 years go? It goes fast, but I'm really glad and grateful that I learned photography in the darkroom and with slide film. A camera is still a light type box, despite all the advances in technology, all the tools at our disposal. There's probably never been a better time to be a storyteller than right now.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I love having the foundation. I know how to operate a camera in manual mode. It's nice to when you tell the camera what to do. So I'm grateful I learned the craft when I did.
Yeah, absolutely. And taking the training wheels off your camera and being able to manipulate it in manual mode just gives you such a more broad range of shots that you can get, just at the drop of a hat, meaning in this case the push of a button or the roll of a slider or something like that. So that's a great point on that. Now that we've talked about kind of the rewarding aspects and what you really like and kind of how you got into it, one question I thought would be really interesting to ask you while I have you here is about the challenges of your career, whether it be through business, travel, not being home a ton during, a busy time, or maybe if you go to Africa or something like that. What's the biggest challenges that you face as being a freelance professional photographer for a living?
Yeah, well, you already touched on a lot of them. Being home can be tough. My wife and I don't have kids. We have two very spoiled dogs. One of
What
whom
kind
is
of dogs are they?
we've got a Pomeranian and a Golden Retriever. The Golden Tank, he's 4. He's a bird dog. He's really birdy. He misses dad when dad's on the road, so it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you touched upon a lot of the big ones. Being away, I think a lot of guys struggle initially with just taking the plunge and going from full-time employment to full-time self-employment. And I've had a handful of guys, good friends in the industry over the years, reach out and say, man, I think I'm ready. Do you think I have what it takes? Should I be self-employed? I've always encouraged them to do it. I didn't want to look back. I didn't want to be an old man someday and look back and say, man, what if I had just tried to do that? What if I had gone out in faith and tried to be a full-time photographer? I never want to have any regrets. And so I'm grateful that I took the plunge and that I've been blessed and it's worked out well. But by no means do I have it all figured out. I mean, it's going to be a lifelong learning process. The challenge is once you accept the fact that you're self-employed, I mean, the real work begins. You've got to hustle. You've really got to hustle. If there's a magic like equation or formula for how to do this, I've yet to find it. I'm not that smart to know what that equation is.
Sure.
For me, it's just been hard work. I'm always preaching that, gross isn't net. I can outwork guys half my age. I'll outwork anybody. That's always been my philosophy. I might not be the most talented photographer, but I will absolutely outwork anybody, even now.
Mm-hmm.
Another sobering reality is, like, in my case, we mentioned turkeys. I love to photograph turkeys.
Yeah.
I'm going to make tens of dollars on turkeys this year.
Yeah.
I used to get 6, 8, 10 magazine covers a year on turkeys, and now I sell a couple of social media pics.
Sure.
So
Right. Yeah.
my income has shifted substantially, like everybody else. From print and magazine sales to social media. You just have to adapt, and that's one of the big challenges. Is just kind of forecasting what's coming and what trends and getting ahead of them and adapting. And the outdoor industry in particular is so small.
So small.
Everybody's a photographer. There's so much competition, but I think there's always going to be room for, a new voice or a new vision and people that work hard and just really, really get after it and invest time and sweat equity. And that's what I've done.
Sure. Just because I'm interested in your answer here, you talk about forecasting the future. What kind of waves do you think that you're kind of currently riding and you can perceive in the future that you'll be riding? I know lots of things have shifted away from print, and I myself am guilty of this. I don't know the last time I bought a magazine. My brother still has a couple subscriptions to the bow hunting magazine, and I believe he gets one about like a Western hunter guide to big game and stuff like that, but that's about it. So what kind of things do you feel like coming up in the future for you are you going to have to kind of grapple with and things like that? Do you have any ideas, or do you just pretty much remain vigilant at all times and ready to be fluid and pivot at any moment?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think being able to pivot, staying vigilant, that's half of it, if not more. For me personally, I mean, honestly, man, there's not much more that I can think of that I'd like to do in the outdoor industry. I mean, there's always going to be new clients and new campaigns, and that's wonderful. I love shooting that stuff. But as far as goals, I miss Africa. I want to go back. I think for me personally, where I see me pivoting in the next maybe 5 years is maybe starting a photo safari company. I've got a good friend in Africa who's reached out. He'd like to partner and lead photo tours in South Africa.
Oh, cool.
I would love to do that, and maybe maybe sell fine art prints. I've got this massive archive of wildlife images that, most of them just collect digital dust. If I can figure out the business plan and the model and find the right market, if it's financially viable, I would love to sell prints and lead photo tours and do things like that. So I think that, I've been blessed to be well traveled, and if I can take that experience and pivot that into a safari company, I would love to. I would love to get folks, within bow range on the ground of Cape buffalo and elephants and rhinos
Yeah,
and leopards. I mean, it'd be awesome. I love that kind of stuff, and so I think it'd be cool to help other people experience some of the things that I have. So that's a big goal. It's kind of a 5-year plan. I'd like to try to this year, maybe June, July, get back to Africa, sit down with my friend, and see if we can't map out a business plan and go from there. And at the same time, keep shooting commercial work because that pays the bills. But the wildlife stuff for me it's kind of my medicine, kind of my therapy. Like this morning, just watching the sun come up. I was watching sandhill cranes and white-tailed deer and geese and a great horned owl, and I had, I don't know, 40, 50 turkeys around my blind for off and on for 3 or 4 hours, and I was rocking 3 cameras and 3 different lenses and trying to chug a cup of coffee. And my wife made a great coffee cake, and it was a good morning, man. Just kind of getting away from people, and just enjoying the sunrise and God's artistry, and that's medicine for me. When I'm traveling a lot, when I'm on the road, sometimes in busy season like September, October, November, I'm on the road every week, and so
hmm,
I kind of relish any opportunity to just get away from people, get away from the grind, and just sit in the blind, or just cruise the back roads out here and photograph mule deer, elk, quail, pheasants, whitetails, whatever.
sure.
Um, but yeah, part of that is just over the years I've archived all these wildlife images, and so yeah, I think for me personally, that's a big goal is safaris, prints. I kind of want to feel more like an artist and less like a mechanic, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Um, the photography game it's great. I think the lifestyle, you have to really embrace it. It's not for everybody. The travel, the deadlines. For every day that I spend in the field shooting, for me it's a day, maybe 2 days behind the laptop. Just editing, and um, I'm not real crazy about that. I'd rather just be out creating and shooting and let someone else deal with the back end stuff. But
right. Yes.
you've got to be a businessman. You've got to be a salesman. You've got to know PR. You've got to be able to sell yourself and your services and shake people's hands, look them in the eye, and convince them that you're the guy to shoot their campaign. So it's probably 30% art and 70% business to do this full time.
Yeah, I would totally agree. We
Yeah.
we do something similar, and
Hmm.
that that business side of running a company in the outdoors, you just have to be such a good executioner and meet your deadlines and go above and beyond when maybe the pay is not even that great to begin with anyway.
Sure.
So I totally understand what you're talking about. It is a business, and it's
Yeah.
unfortunate that the business side of it has to outweigh the creative side, but just because of by virtue of it being such a small industry,
Yeah.
lots of people like you are forced to essentially be a jack of all trades and do that as well. So
Right. Right. It takes focus too. Excuse me. I've had a lot of guys over the years, younger guys than me, ask me like, "Hey, what does it take to do full time? Hunting, outdoor photography, fishing photography,
yep.
whatever." And I think I always just come back to like just try to have tunnel vision focus. I know some shooters who have all the talent in the world, but they've got golf clubs and jet skis and side by sides
Mm-hmm.
and whatever, and every weekend they're out doing something fun. And when your passion becomes your paycheck, sometimes the lines get kind of blurred between fun and business and profit. And
Yeah.
it's my life is photography. Other than my wife and our dogs and our home and that side of my personal life is photography. And it takes absolute focus. I had a good friend in Utah that was a great photographer. He was just struggling to go full time. I don't think he ever did. And he had, again, he had motorbikes and jet skis and all this stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm like, man, your weekends, even if when I was first getting started, I wasn't shooting a lot of assignments, but I was just trying to build a portfolio. And so I would just take one or two of my buddies out on the weekends whenever my friends were available. I'd buy them dinner or whatever, get them a cup of coffee if they'd give me an hour or two. And I would just go shoot stock photos. I'd have one guy hold a bow, one guy hold a rifle or a shotgun or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and just throw in a bunch of products and just just go nuts and just shoot a bunch of stock photos. And my wife and I would go to Barnes and Noble almost every week, maybe every couple weeks, and I would sit down with a big stack of magazines. And to this day, I still do this, more online for reference, but I would look at all kinds of reference magazines, and there would never be a single hunting magazine in the mix. I would look at canoeing and kayaking magazines and snowboarding and skiing and
Yeah.
food magazines, travel, heck, even wedding magazines. I mean, other industries, especially like rock climbing and snowboarding. I think those industries are light years ahead of most others in terms of creativity and how their photographers shoot
Sure.
to those industries. And so that kind of dovetails into, you mentioned, how do you stay ahead of the trend? How do you anticipate what's coming? And I've always tried to look at other industries for inspiration and adapt similar looks to what I do for the outdoor industry, just to keep our industry fresh and exciting and dynamic, but at the same time, shoot it authentically.
Yeah.
I want to shoot with like absolute unapologetic authenticity. I'm an outdoorsman. I'm a hunter. I'm proud to fill our freezer every year. That'll never change. But I don't want to glorify, the blood sport aspect of it. I want to tell the whole story. I want to shoot it with absolute authenticity, unapologetic, realism, but also push the creativity and just give the industry new and different looks and keep it exciting, keep it fresh, but also keep it authentic.
Yeah, that's a very good answer, and I like what you said about keeping it authentic. That's a very good strategy. I mean, to really keep your eyes fresh, if you will, to take looks at other magazines of other industries and other industries that may be, several decades ahead of the hunting industry in terms of the technologies that they're using and things like that. And I do feel like, in the hunting industry, there's about a 10-year lag time. But between when things are happening on the cutting edge of like, your Silicon Valley, Google type-esque companies and the hunting industry catching up to it. Smart guys like you are able to forecast that, get in front of it and start, creating the own cutting edge on the hunting industry.
Excuse me. Exactly, man. Like it's for the greater good too. Like I want to see the industry do well. These are tough times, and I want to see other photographers succeed. I mean, if we all succeed, it's great. There's work out there, and I want to see the industry stay exciting and recruit and retain new hunters. But if you don't challenge yourself to see things differently and to bring different looks for your clients, you're going to get stagnant. And I won't mention the brand, but this was probably at least 15 years ago. I was shooting for a couple different clients, and one of them was new, and I presented kind of a mood board with what I thought would be a cool vision for the shoot and the brand, and the owner kind of laughed. He goes, "Buddy, remember, we sell pee in a can. We sell deer pee in a can. Calm down,
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, yeah, man, but let's make it dynamic. Let's make it look cool." He's like, "Man, it's pee in a can. Don't get too excited,
Yeah.
And I was like, "Man, you really can't think of it that way. You've got to stand out. You got to be creative. You got to push the envelope." So that's what I've tried to do, and hopefully I have over the years. It's shooting different stuff is good. Sometimes I feel like I'm spread a little thin. It's wildlife one day and portraits the next, and then product and documentary and humanitarian, and I've done a bunch of different stuff, and I like it. It definitely keeps my eye fresh, and I'm always pointing the camera at something different, but it kind of comes and goes in spurts. Like right now, I'm on a big wildlife kick. I'm going to spend most of April and May just chasing turkeys with a bow, a shotgun, and a camera, and pick up the commercial stuff again over the summer with some fishing stuff probably. But for now, I'm content to get up early, chase turkeys, pound coffee, edit turkey pics, go to bed, get up and do it again.
Sure. Kind of getting into your workflow here. You mentioned earlier today that you shot about 3,000 photos and that you're editing them currently. But if you back up before then and you have a camera in your hand, your SD card's clean, it's ready to roll, and now you're going to go on your photography trip for the day, maybe for the week, for the month, for a client, however big or small. Take the listeners on a tour of what goes into getting the caliber of, type of shots that you take and deliver to your clients. So client picks up the phone, you answer, you say, "Hey, it's going to cost this much." All right, you're hired, sign this contract. Then what do you do? once the work begins?
Sure, sure. Again, tough question to answer. It's case by case,
Sure. Yep.
and I can just kind of walk through some recent examples to kind of illustrate how I approach things. A couple weeks ago, I shot two magazine covers. One was a crossbow cover, one was a archery bow hunting cover, a vertical bow cover. And magazines have smaller budgets. It was just me, two friends of mine who modeled for the covers, and that was it. I was my
Mm-hmm.
own assistant. I had light stands and clamps and reflectors, and I was the photographer, the grip, the PA. I was the producer and craft services all in one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes it's me and an assistant. Sometimes it's me. I've got I mentioned my business partner earlier, Caleb White. Caleb and I own Grit Media, so together we team up on several shoots, whether I'm his second shooter or he's my second shooter, or he's doing video and I'm shooting stills.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's me, and if I'm working with an advertising agency on behalf of a client, there might be a producer, an art director, some marketing folks. I've done shoots with crews of 20, 30 people, which is kind of crazy. That's a lot of moving
Yeah.
parts. Um, I've did a couple shoots for Dick's Sporting Goods before that were highly produced, and we've had a lot of people, and so yeah, I mean it's teamwork. And I always tell my clients that if they could think of a great shot, by all means, like, speak up. I don't have an ego. I always want to be humble. I think a lot of my best shots over the years, someone else had suggested them, and I just pushed a button.
Sure.
So I thrive on the teamwork. I mean, I've got ideas and I've got kind of the way I approach things, but again, you've got to be able to adapt. And if you're going to work with people, you have to listen and try to execute what they want. Um, I could spend an hour on a shoot just ripping photos, thinking I'm getting some great stuff, and the photos might be technically perfect. They might be creative, but if it isn't what the client envisions for their brand, then the stuff I shot's completely useless.
Yeah.
You have to understand that you have to park your ego sometimes and listen and be able to take someone else's vision and then capture that the way they want it, and tell the story the way they want it to be told, not the way you think it should be. So that's a big part of it, is just being open to changing and pivoting and adapting to what clients want. But for me, it's I shoot fast, I shoot a lot, and I think it goes back to my journalism background. I probably create more work for myself than I should, really. I shoot too much. It's one of my biggest flaws as a photographer. I should just, after 20 years, you think I would just slow down.
Yeah.
But I'm not wired that way, man. I love to shoot. Film's cheap. Why not?
Yeah.
Just spray and pray. When I'm shooting strobes, that's more methodical. There's a lot more to it. That's a lot less of a volume output kind of a day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm shooting a Fuji medium format kit right now, which is really cool. It's called the Fuji GFX. In addition to an APS-C kit and a Nikon full frame kit. I've been bouncing back and forth between like Leica and Nikon and Fuji over the past probably 3 years. My wife likes to call it my midlife camera crisis. It's a pretty accurate description. I'm quick to remind her that it's 100% tax deductible.
Yeah. Absolutely.
My midlife crisis. It's not a sports car. It could be a lot worse, right?
It could be way worse.
But this medium format kit's what I shot today, and it's the camera's pushing 102 megapixel files. It does 5 frames per second, but the focus tracking is pretty crappy. It's meant for like landscapes and portraits and product,
Mm-hmm.
but I want to shoot it for wildlife because the colors are unreal. The images are just beautiful. The files are so clean, so crisp. And I had some turkeys at like 10 yards, and I put the blind up on kind of a low spot in hopes of getting some strutters like skyline and silhouetted, just real clean shots. And this morning, after like 4 sits this week, it finally worked out. Got some really cool stuff, which is really rewarding when you put your time in and you get skunked for a few days and it finally works out.
Mm-hmm.
To see these birds at almost full frame at 100 megapixels is just great. But that camera's making me shoot a lot less than I typically do. Is my point. So on a big day might be 5,000 or 6,000 photos. Today it's close to 3,000. So the camera's making me slow down and be a little more methodical and kind of think things think things through a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
which is good. But yeah, my biggest flaw is just shooting too much and then costing myself way too much time on the back end. But um, I can say this too. I'm by no means I'm not a retoucher. I'm not a designer. My editing is very, very basic, and a lot of people might laugh at this or even be surprised, but I rarely use Lightroom. In my case, I do a shoot. I'll flag my selects. I usually send the clients DNGs, which is just like a compressed raw file format.
Yep.
I love working with DNGs. So I'll go through all my shots from the day. I'll 5-star my selects, convert those to DNG, and just do a basic pass for like contrast, clarity, saturation, just 5 or 6 basic things, and then hand those off to the client and let them do what they want with them. I've had clients contact me and say, "Hey, do you care if we do this to the file?" And man, I couldn't care less. They're paying me a good day rate to shoot this stuff. They can do what they want with them.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, I was talking to a fellow photographer recently. He was on a shoot, an agency shoot, and I love this. They had a Digitech on hand, and I like working with Digitechs because they do all the file structure, organizing, metadata, all that stuff. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
And he said on this guy's cart, he had a big sign that he had made, like with a Sharpie and a piece of poster board, and it said "Fix it in pre" as opposed to "Fix it in post."
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the main thing. Oh, we'll just Photoshop it. We'll fix it in post. We'll fix it later.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy said, no, fix it in pre. So kind of made me chuckle. And I try to do that. Like I don't want to spend days and days and days at the computer. So I try to get everything as close to perfect in camera as I can. Just do minor edits on the back end. Hand off a drive to the client and move on.
Sure. That's a that's a good 1,000-foot view of what you're doing, and 104 megapixels. That's absolutely huge. We have a Canon EOS R that we take our photos with for our clients and stuff like that. And obviously, we're not pushing the megapixel tonnage that you are, but I can't imagine how clear. And some of these, I was going to get into this a little later, but now's a good time to. Some of these images that you've been sending me over text, I mean, absolutely incredible. I can't wait to post some of these and use some of these and for the cover art of this episode. So
Appreciate that. Thanks.
if you guys do not follow him right now, what is your Instagram handle? Is it John Hafner Photo?
It is, yeah, John Hafner Photo. JohnHafner Photo, PHOTO.
Yeah.
My website is johnhafner.photography. Website's kind of a mess. There's way too much stuff on there. I've got to pare it down to just some recent stuff. But,
Sure.
But yeah, man, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Really, I mean, no one needs 102 megapixel files. That's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's a big file.
It's kind of like the smoke them if you got them. We have the capability, the technology.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What exactly is your favorite? And I think I know the answer. I'm pretty sure it's turkeys, like you've already mentioned. But what do you enjoy most about photography, specifically as it pertains to capturing the wild turkey? Why is that the thing that got you hooked, and the thing that you seem to enjoy the most?
Yeah, I know I tend to ramble, so I'll try to keep this one brief. Man, I think I'm going to answer it like this. I think being a hunter has made me a better photographer. I like to anticipate the animal's body language and posture and movements, and just anticipate the shot. When I'm photographing elk in September, you got to tell when they're gonna bow up and when they're gonna bugle. When you're photographing whitetails in November, I love when two bucks will kind of parallel each other, and bow up, and you just anticipate the shot. And this morning I had these two little jakes at my decoy, and my decoy it's an old beat up full body mount, taxidermy mount of an Osceola gobbler that I shot probably 10 or 12 years ago for my Grand Slam.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a C- mount, not a very good mount, but it makes for an A+ decoy. And I had these two jakes come in quiet.
That's awesome.
They came in completely silent behind my blind, and it took them about an hour to go the last 15 yards and then strut around this decoy. And jakes are annoying. Jakes they can ruin your day, but they're also kind of cool to photograph because there's so many cool, looking at the pics now, there's so many cool little moments where they'd peck at the head and then their eyes would get real big and they'd kind of half gobble and then they'd look at each other and then together they'd like move in unison right toward the decoy. They wouldn't do anything alone. They had to do it together in sequence, you know.
Yep.
And I guess to answer the question, I love to kind of just anticipate what the animal's going to do and then get ready for it, anticipate it, and then capture the shot. I love that. Whether it's elk or whitetails or turkeys, or in Africa, it's, you know, cats, big cats, leopards, lions, cheetahs. You know, turkeys are definitely one of my favorites, but if someone said to me, like, you've got to pick one subject to photograph, I think I'd be torn between sporting dogs. I love to photograph bird hunts with great dogs.
Hmm.
I'd be torn between that and African wildlife. Those are my two biggest passions
Okay.
for sure.
I was going to think that you were going to pick the turkey for that one, but interesting pivot with sport dog. I'm shocked that you don't have, golden retrievers, obviously, kind of what I would say on the fringe, but really
Yeah,
competitive dogs. In
yeah.
terms of sport dogs, I'm shocked you don't have like a GSP or a Vizsla or a wired-haired pointer or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've photographed all those breeds. I love GSPs, Vizslas, Griffons, all of them. They're great. But at the same time, I'm not a trainer.
Sure.
I'm just not that guy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I were to get a high octane, super high caliber, you know, stud bird dog, I would likely be doing him a huge disservice. I
Sure.
could photograph him and make him look great, but I just don't have time to hunt every weekend, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, we had a golden previously. When she passed, it broke our heart. She was like 14, and we're just kind of golden people, you know. Tank,
Mm-hmm.
my boy, he's proven to be a heck of a bird dog. He's really birdy. He'll go all day. He's only about 60 pounds. He's fit. He's on
Oh,
a
so
raw
that's a
diet.
that's a little golden by
Yeah,
most
he's like
people's
60,
standards.
65 pounds.
Yeah.
He's all muscle, and he's on a raw diet at the recommendation of the breeder. So he eats better than I do. He eats 2 pounds of raw meat a day. He had bison and venison yesterday,
Whoa, that is
with
a high maintenance dog you got there.
he had an afternoon snack. He had a salmon fillet. He had some bison and some ground venison. So he's loving life, but it's going to keep him healthy for a long time. I think the last time I spoke to the breeder, she said that the last golden that died at the kennel from Tank's bloodline was 17.
Whoa.
And that dog never ate kibble, was on a raw diet his whole life. So it's been a learning curve. It's a challenge. We work with a company called Idahound in Idaho. Great guys, Idahound, and I'm able to work a deal with them and shoot a bunch of photos, and so we get some great food and yeah, the raw diet. It's definitely, it takes discipline, but he's a great dog, and I think last summer I think he successfully stalked and took down probably 10 or 15 magpies and doves in our backyard. Um, so in between hunts, he likes to, I guess, keep himself sharp. And lucky for him, the doves were Eurasian, so you can kill him legally. He's not a poacher.
Oh,
Um,
perfect.
but he's birdie. Yeah, he's really birdie. So yeah, I mean, I would love to have a kennel full of dogs here, and it's just, I'm just not that guy. Again, it goes back to focus and just kind of staying in your lane. You know, I rarely work on my truck. I rarely do my own landscaping. I'm just a photographer, you know.
Sure.
But I found for me, the more I spread myself thin, the worse I'm going to be as a creative and as a businessman.
I
I
just
just
turned
want to stay in my lane.
29 the other, oh shoot, March 30th. Last Wednesday I turned 29, John, and I already know that about myself as well. I feel like there's two
Yeah,
scenarios in which my work goes to shit, and that is A, when I am extremely tired, and B, when I am spread too thin and have too many things going on my
yeah,
plate at one time, and I don't like that, and so
yeah.
as I've getting older, I've just continuously been trying to take one thing at a time and taking it off my plate so I can be hyper focused and excellent at one singular thing. So
Well, good for you,
I
man.
totally
That's great. At
totally
29, that you've
understand
come
you.
to that realization. Yeah, good for you. A lot of folks never get to that point. And again, it's passion versus paycheck. It's focus. Um, you know, for me, like I said, I love telling stories. I love to have a camera in my hand and just do my thing. And so I'm fortunate that, you know, it works out well. I don't really have a desire to on the weekends to do anything else. You know, it's my life. It's what I do, and it's good. I think focus is one of the biggest things you need to have as a self-employed creative, especially in our industry. It's small. Everyone's a photographer. I'm not gonna be the grumpy old guy that says, "Oh, these kids and their damn smartphones, and their
Yeah.
Instagram filters. Everyone's a photographer."
Yep.
It's not that bad.
Uh-huh.
There's a ton of opportunity out there for a fresh vision and someone with not afraid who's not afraid to work hard. Get in the trenches. I think that the game hasn't changed really. It's just the delivery method. It's I used to shoot a lot of stuff for magazines, and now it's social. And you just have to keep up with it and
Yeah.
find a way to adapt. And who knows what's coming down the pipe next? But whatever it is, I'll be ready for it. I'll figure it out. Um, it's just I tell my clients it's just photography. Like we'll figure this out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. You got to be vigilant. You got to be on your toes. But if you were a pragmatic, like problem solving individual, I feel like that's one of the biggest characteristics that's going to benefit you as being a small business owner, just because you were able to move and pivot and do what you need to do to continue on and get over the next hurdle. Just because, all right, we got this roadblock in front of us. It's got an XY relationship. If we can understand X and we can execute and eventually produce Y, regardless of the intermediary time between the two. So I really like what you said about that. But speaking about your adventures, this is the number one question I was dying to. Well, I have two more that have really piqued my curiosity. So
Yeah, man. Take your time. Take your time.
Perfect. On your Instagram handle, like any viewer, you can see that you've been to Africa many times. I don't know if that's your craziest adventure, but in your time as a wildlife photographer, what has been the absolute craziest adventure that photography has taken you on? And what is that story? Share it with us.
Yeah. Man, I wish I had some epic tale of like a near death experience. Maybe I do. I was in Zimbabwe, 2009. That was my first trip to Africa. It was kind of a weird Africa baptism. Zimbabwe's it's a pretty sketchy place, at
Mm-hmm.
least where I was. I was shooting a Cape Buffalo hunt for a client. Um, we were in this remote bush camp, no frills, good camp. Didn't feel all that at risk or in danger. Although we had a ranger, a young kid named Augustine. I think he was maybe 25. He had a Russian Kalashnikov. The serial number was scratched out. He wouldn't let me photograph his rifle. It was obviously black market.
Yeah.
Um, he was enamored by Americans. He said, "Mr. John, are you an American?" I said, "Yeah, buddy." He said, "You must know Mariah Carey." And so for 2 weeks, I
What the
just
hell?
played along like I knew Mariah Carey and Celine Dion and John Cougar Mellencamp and all the fancy, famous Americans that the African people thought that we all knew. So it was kind
Yeah.
of fun. I'm like, "Yeah, man, I went to high school with Mariah Carey. She's a great girl." "Oh, man, I'm her biggest fan." Whatever. But he told me if we saw people wearing camouflage in the bush, that they would no doubt be poachers. And if I had a clean shot, I was to whistle, he would throw me his rifle and I could shoot them. And I said, "Man,
Whoa.
I'm not doing that." And he said, "Well, the government would thank you." And I said, "I want to see my wife again. Like I'm not doing that. And fortunately, it didn't come to that. But probably halfway through the hunt, the hunter, we were looking for a buffalo and hadn't found the one he wanted yet. But he shot a big eland. For those who don't know, an eland is like a 2,000-pound antelope. It's a massive, massive antelope in Africa. And it was a really good hunt, great stock, great footage. There was a videographer there as well. And in the process of shooting the hero shots and I was shooting some stuff while the video guy was shooting some cutaways, some walk-ups and recovery shots and stuff. We were just taking our time, having fun. Augustine, the ranger, all of a sudden he yelled, "Mr. John, get your chit. We go now." And I learned when the ranger says, "Get your chit,"
Yeah.
you grab your stuff. I looked up and there were like probably 30 or 40 elephants bearing down on us. And he was keeping watch over this herd while we were shooting photos. And I wasn't really paying attention. Lesson learned.
Yeah.
Always keep your eyes open. And I guess the matriarch saw us or smelled us or something and didn't like what she saw or what she smelled. And all of a sudden they came in through the bush trumpeting, just coming right at us. And we scattered all different directions. I remember the videographer left his tripod sticks just standing up and grabbed his camera and took off. And it was every man for himself. We just scattered. And I think I ran maybe maybe 100 yards before my lungs gave out. It was hot, and I just face planted, put my photo backpack over the back of my neck, just I guess as an instinct of self-preservation,
Yeah.
and the ground was just shaking, and I mean the elephants were just running right through where we were. They probably ran, I don't know, 25, 30 yards from me. It felt like 2 or 3 feet.
Mm-hmm.
The ground was just shaking. I remember it being this harrowing, like, horrible near-death experience. It probably wasn't quite that bad, but they were legit like 20, 25 yards away.
Yeah.
35, 40 elephants, whatever. There's quite a few trumpeting. I remember hearing branches snap and the ground was shaking. And I'm just laying there with my backpack over my neck thinking, like, please don't squash me. And after maybe 5 or 10 minutes went by, and there was no cover. It was all just like grass. There was no timber, no rocks, no trees. It was just like prairie.
Mm-hmm.
After probably 5 or 10 minutes, we kind of got up and regrouped, and we went back to where we were shooting photos. And there were tracks right where we were standing. There were tracks like a foot from the guy's tripod. I mean, they would have squashed us if we'd stayed there. So that was probably the most dangerous situation I've been in. Fortunately, I only have that one story. I don't have a lot of close calls. Praise God. I've never been sick traveling. I've never really been in harm's way. I've never had any gear stolen, or my gear's never broken down on a shoot. I've never had any close calls like that. So, no plane crashes, no water landings, anything like that. So, just that one story, really.
That is a hell of a story. I would also be quaking in my boots if I was you in a herd of elephant. I just don't have any, other than, my days at the zoo when I was 5,
Right.
10, 12 years old. I do not have any concept of the scale and size of an elephant. It stands, 14, 15, 16 feet tall at the top of the ear, and it's just,
They're big.
they're so big, and there's different subspecies of elephant and stuff like that. It's just, I can't imagine what a herd of them feels like shaking the ground, just
Yeah,
feet
they're
away from you.
surprisingly
That's
nimble, too.
insane.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Excuse me. They're surprisingly nimble and fast. But well, man, if I start that photo safari company, come with me. Put you up front and center. Put you close to them.
That would be awesome. I'm looking forward to getting over to Africa. I was planning on going about 3 summers ago, but I had a thing going with my old taxidermist, but that kind of ended up falling through, and he didn't end up going on the trip, so I was not able to go. But that was a heck of a good story. Thank you for sharing. Number
I would
one.
encourage you, man. It's an awesome place, and the outfitter afterwards, he was kind of shook up, and he said, and he jokingly said, he said, guys, you learned a valuable lesson when you're on safari in Africa. All you have to be is the second slowest guy in your group, and as long as you can outrun the next guy, you'll be okay. Like leave one guy behind to get eaten or trampled, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So, the lesson there is just don't be the slowest guy. You can be the second slowest, but don't be the slowest.
Fair enough. That's like the old adage that they use with a bear, right?
Right.
If you see a grizzly, then you're fine as long as you're not the slowest.
Exactly. You just break your buddy's kneecap or something and run.
Yep.
But man, I would encourage you. Africa's awesome. It's kind of a convicting, humbling experience. We I don't think we realize just how much we have and how much we're blessed with, and you see a whole different culture, a different way of life. The kids are awesome. They're so happy. The kids are beautiful in Africa. Big bright eyes, big smiles. I love to go to like a Maasai village, like in Kenya, and just spend time with people and photograph and shoot portraits. And I love doing that kind of stuff when there's time in between, game drives and wildlife stuff. But
yeah,
Africa's awesome. I love it. I've been to Zimbabwe, Namibia, South Africa, Uganda, I think a couple other countries, but I want to go to Tanzania. I've got a bucket list I'll probably never be able to conquer, but in addition to that, I want to go to Brazil. I want to shoot jaguars. I want to shoot pumas in Argentina. Hopefully, snow leopards in India someday. It's a big list. I got to get after it.
Yeah, that's a cool connection here for you. I'm a school teacher, 8th grade math teacher by day, and I teach in a fairly urban area of a larger metropolis. It's about 300,000, 400,000 people total, called the Quad City metropolitan area. And there's, I guess, 4 or 5 boroughs, kind of like a little dichotomy of a New York City-esque feel. Not as large in scale by any means, but there's about 5 major cities. And in one of the cities where I teach, there's particular busing lines, your district lines. We have 2 junior highs, and lots of the students that attend my junior high that I work at are actually African immigrants. So we have about 7 different African dialects spoken, Kiwi, Ewe, French, and lots of those people from, North Central Africa that are immigrants that I interact with pretty much every day. So I totally understand what you mean by when you say you visit these places and you're humbled. I see that pretty much every day and interact with those kids that, are fresh off of the boat, quote unquote, and don't have a whole lot, and they're just hitting American soil for the first time. And here's this big, tall, first white person they've ever seen in their life, trying to teach them math and what the heck is pre-algebra and why do you guys have these little drinking fountains everywhere? And it's just kind of funny seeing them interact and, try to acclimate to American culture in that way. So I can totally understand with.
That's cool, man. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's good to expose yourself to different cultures and ways of life and different ways of doing things. And I've had similar deals like in Argentina, just photographing like cowboys in Argentina and just stuff like that. It's cool. I love to do like black and white portrait work, stuff like that. I love telling their stories too. It's fun.
Yeah. My last question I have for you here is between you, Chris, and I'm sure Lance Kruger, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, you guys just take such breathtaking wildlife photos. Chris with, primarily elk is what I kind of think of him. But for Lance, I think of more of the whitetail guy of the 3 of you. And for you, certainly the turkey guy. So when you guys are locating these animals, like when I look through just your tiles on Instagram and I'm looking through, I'm like, holy crap, how are you finding these caliber of like high quality animals here? Like what? I look through some of these pictures that you have and I'm like, if this guy's not deer hunting, he's insane. If this guy's not elk hunting, he's insane. Look at these monstrous whitetails. Like I'm looking at this black and white photo that you took of a deer you called Buck Norris right now. And the deer's got to be, in the 170s, gnarly. He's got some junk hanging off his rack, like splits. It's like a borderline once in a lifetime deer. Looking at another one here. So my question, and one thing I've always wondered, and Garrett, who's my other podcast co-host, and he and I talk about this all the time because we just are enamored by these photos of specifically the 3 of you. And I look and I'm like, these guys are obviously experts at getting close to large whitetails, and specifically talking about whitetails right now.
Sure.
How do you go about locating? Because I'm assuming lots of this is done, especially if you're doing it in your home state. Lots of it's probably done on public land or photo assignments or stuff like that. And how are you locating these? Because I mean, especially for Lance too, he's got these pictures of these, 180 plus monsters just left and right all over his grid. And I'm like, where are you hunting?
Lance.
I've never seen. I've never seen a whitetail that big on the hoof. Other than maybe 1 or 2. So I just wanted to kind of ask you about that and what your strategy is for like how long you're willing to sit, and do you know like a big deer's in the area when you're going and targeting these specifically like whitetail centric photo shoots, or what's the strategy there behind that?
Sure. I can lead with this. I won't give a turkey 20 minutes. There's so many birds out here. If I don't get a good shot within 20 minutes, I'll go find another turkey. So a very impatient turkey guy. I don't think I'm going to divulge any trade secrets here. It really depends, man. I would love to tell you that I'm hiking 10, 15 miles a day and that I'm way in the backcountry. I'm in a bivvy for 2 weeks in the backcountry in hopes of getting, one good encounter. Sometimes, you're hunting and when I do hunt, I try to pack a long lens just in case, and you do bump into some stuff. And I'll just speak for my experience. So a lot of the like Buck Norris, and I've never been a guy to name whitetails, but he's such a cool buck.
Yeah,
I thought he was worthy of a cool title. I'm a big Chuck Norris fan. In fact, no joke, I'm wearing a Chuck Norris T-shirt right now. It says I took a roundhouse kick from Chuck Norris at the 1996 Texas State Fair, and I've had a couple people at airports ask me if that actually happened. So anyway, but So Buck Norris, he lives on a refuge. It's like an 18,000 acre refuge, not too far from Missoula.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the Bison Range.
Okay.
Um, it's close to home. It's like an hour and 15 from my driveway, and so I can go up there and back in a day. Or sometimes, like this past November, I spent a week up there, just got a hotel, and I was a lot closer than commuting through Missoula. I think a lot of these big deer and elk, they're shot at national parks or refuges.
Sure.
There's absolutely, a free range scenario. There's a predator prey dynamic, that kind of deal. They're not zoos. They're not, you know, um, backyard by any means. All these turkeys are free range. I prefer to photograph on bigger properties if I can.
Sure.
I'm usually in a ground blind. In my case at the bison range, a lot of it's drive through. There's a place you can hike like 2 miles round trip along the creek. This past November, I would walk it every day with a couple other photo buddies of mine, and some of those bigger deer, that's where they kind of push the does down there in peak rut, and they tend those does down there. And so, there's that magic window, just like when you're bow hunting, like they get sloppy, they make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And Buck Norris and four or five of his buddies, in November, we were able to get within bow range of them almost every day, from 20 to 50 yards as they're pushing does and kind of sizing each other up. And so there's kind of that magic window where if you know where to go and the odds are typically going to be in your favor. I think a lot of those big elk are photographed like in Banff and Jasper and Rocky Mountain National Park. Did you hear about one of the legendary bulls? They called him Bruno or Kahuna. He was a Rocky Mountain National Park Estes bull. He just died like 2 weeks ago. So it was kind of the end of an era. A lot of guys photographed him. He was an awesome bull.
Sure.
We've got a bull he goes by Harold or Octane. We think he's 14 this year. He survived the winter, which is good. So we'll have
Gosh.
hopefully at least one more good year with him. He's a bison range bull. He's definitely one of the most photographed bulls out here.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's 14 or 15. He used to be probably a 420 class bull. He's nowhere near that now, but
Good Lord.
he's a great bull. And it's so cool that, one of the things I really love about this is I've got like a 10-year history with that bull.
Yeah.
I've known Buck Norris now for 5 years. I know he's 6.5, without question.
Yeah.
I know the 3.5 and 4.5 year old bucks that are going to be the next round of big guys that we'll photograph in the next 2 or 3 years. So I like being able to go to places like that, to go to a big refuge or other places and know the deer, know their pattern, know where to find them, know their age. It's cool. I love looking through my archive and I've got Octane when he was a 5-year-old up and comer. It's really cool. I like that a lot.
I've always been so interested in that question because some of these deer that Lance is finding, I'm like, man, is he just really good at Photoshop and just taking ear tags out of these things on these huge game ranges and stuff? Because I'm like, these deer are like once in a lifetime deer for any whitetail hunter from PA, Indiana, Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, Michigan.
Oh man, believe me,
from the Midwest, it's just incredible.
If I was on public or a piece of private and that I had access to, I was bow hunting or whatever and didn't have a camera and Buck Norris walked by, I'd definitely take a poke at him. Believe me,
100%.
People have said, oh, can you hunt where you shoot these deer? No, you could do it, but it'd be the last thing you ever do. I mean, it's highly protected.
Yeah.
So
that's fair enough.
I don't know where a lot of other guys photograph, specifically, but yeah, I mean, I think everybody's got ethics and standards, I would hope. And, it's a lot of fair chase stuff. I was fortunate coming up through the ranks at Realtree. Like I learned commercial photography and wildlife photography from some of the best names ever in our industry, like Don Jones and Lon Lauber and Tim Christie and Lee Chose, Dushan Smetana, Mitch Kezar, and so I feel like I was kind of put on a short track as far as learning kind of some of these spots and how to sell photos and how to get in the business end of it. And I've just been going to these places for a long time. And even though I live like 4.5 hours from Yellowstone, I rarely go there. I won't go to Yellowstone in the summer. There's too many people.
Sure.
I won't go till, if I go, it'll be late September before I go.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, like the bison range, it's close, it's nearby. It's not great for elk. I mean, there's some good bulls, but it's pretty rare to go there and get skunked and come back with nothing. And so for me, it's like some days there's only 4 or 5 cars there. It's almost like my own little private mini Yellowstone sometimes.
Yeah.
I like that, and again, I love having the history with these deer and these elk. When Octane passes, it's gonna be sad. I'm gonna miss him. He's my buddy. I've had him within bow range for 10 years with a camera. It's awesome.
That's unreal.
Yeah,
That
it's a
accurately.
blessing, man. Yeah.
Yeah, that really answers my question, though. I've always been really interested in that. I don't know if Octane is the bull that you photograph with that drop tine.
Yeah,
Like,
that's him. Yep.
okay, that's him. Got it. I was like, man, it looks. I don't know if this guy's got like 1,000 millimeter lens on, but this sucker looks like he's at 20 yards, and so it makes
Yeah.
sense, that you've
Yeah.
had him that close to you a lot before.
A lot of the
So,
pics are with a 500 or a 600, and people that don't know photography look at a lens like that and they think it's a telescope. Like you could photograph a deer at half a mile. It's not true. Like if you want to get like a Lance Kruger-esque head and shoulder, beautiful whitetail portrait, it's 30 yards with even with a big lens.
yep.
So you got to get close, but and along with that, you've got to respect them and respect their space. And you can't, in September, you just can't walk up on an elk and sneak up on them and harass them. I've seen people just about get gored, and it's you got to keep your wits about you and pay attention. Just because you're on a refuge or a national park doesn't mean you couldn't get gored or trampled.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Getting into another segment that we do on our podcast, at the very end, I always like to ask a list of would you rather questions to our guests. So I've got about 6 or 7 of them written down here. They're anything from nonsense, as kind of stupid questions, to questions that are hopefully going to make you think about what your answer is. So are you ready to go? It's kind of like a rapid fire thing.
All right, man, tee it up. Let's do it.
Okay. Question 1. Would you rather photograph turkeys for the rest of your career or change species every year till you retire?
Change species.
Okay. I thought that was going to be more of a hang-up for you, but I'm impressed with how quickly you answered that.
Well, all that Africa talk got me kind of pumped up, man. I might book a safari when we hang up here. Yeah.
Okay. Number 2. You have 2 contracts in the works for photography work. The first is a $15,000 contract with NWTF to go shoot turkeys for their new magazine cover. Another is a $25,000 contract with a new up-and-coming camo brand. Both shoots are 1 week long. Which are you going to go with?
I think I'm going to pick NWTF, the first one, for 2 reasons. Do you want to hear the reasons, or are we moving along?
Oh yeah, 100%. Why would you do that?
So Turkey Federation, my first client. I'm gonna plug them even more. Yeah, I mean they're great people. In fact, I've got an outdoor writer buddy of mine, Darren McDougall, just interviewed me for a story in the next issue, kind of a profile piece in Turkey.
Oh, cool.
So my wife said, you're getting old when 20 somethings are calling to get like a retrospective piece on your career, right? So
yeah.
But the Turkey Federation, great folks, love what they do. They were my first client. They're still a client, so for that reason, I would pick them. And secondly, I still bleed Realtree. I love Bill Jordan, love those guys. They put me on the map, in the industry. So out of allegiance to them, I would pick. I wouldn't shoot the camo campaign.
Okay. This is an interesting one for you. I am perplexed as to what your answer will be, but if you had to hang up the camera right now and put yourself into another career or another industry other than the hunting industry, what would you want to do and why?
That's a good question. 2 things come to mind, 2 very different tracks.
Okay.
Getting back to sporting dogs, I told you, with full disclosure, I'm not a trainer. I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
Maybe I could be that guy, though. It'd be cool to work with bird dogs, to have a kennel, to do that kind of stuff. I think that'd be a really cool way to spend your days, just hanging out with great dogs and learning from them while you try to train them, right?
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Secondly, I joke a lot with my wife that if I'm fortunate to retire early, I might volunteer to be a sheriff's deputy and just be a traffic cop and pull people over. Montana is getting so crowded and so busy, and everybody says they have the worst drivers. I think we have the worst drivers, man. And I'm so sick of like slow left lane drivers, people not signaling. So I think I would take a certain measure of satisfaction just being like a volunteer policeman and just pulling people over and writing traffic citations.
Okay. That a side
Rand,
tangent about Montana. I don't know. So Montana is kind of like pie in the sky. And so for the last 7 years, like I said, I've been a school teacher in Moline, Illinois. So it's kind of
okay.
where Illinois and Iowa meet, kind of in the southeast corner of Iowa
Okay.
and the northwest corner of Illinois. And my career, I've pursued a master's degree in curriculum and instruction, which is essentially, gives you the right to develop curriculum and flow students through your school corporation in a cohesive manner. And, basically, for all intents and purposes, what you learn in step 1 is building up to what you get to step 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, a step being a grade. And then my second one is in administration and supervision. So actually next year I'm going to be a principal. But before I knew I was going to be a principal in my home district in Moline, I was thinking, all right, Michaela, which is the name of my wife, if there is one time in our life to go and take the plunge and to go try, either Montana or Wyoming, that is the two places that I would love to move, because I drive through Montana on my way to Wyoming every year from a backcountry fly fishing trip in the Bighorns. So
cool. Nice.
I was thinking, we should just do it. Let's just move out there. Let's go. And then I get on realtor.com, and then a really sobering thought crosses through my head right once I see all the housing prices in Missoula, in Bozeman, in Sheridan, Wyoming, in Gillette, Wyoming. And I'm like, holy crap, how does anybody afford to live out there? Like pre the housing boom out there, if you got in at the air quotes right time, maybe like you and your wife did before people started really hustling out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I was thinking to myself, like, as a teacher, legitimately, how could I afford to keep the lights on if this 2-bed, 1-bath house in Bozeman is going to be $400,000? And I'm thinking to myself, like, how can people afford to live out there?
Yeah, man. Honestly, I don't know. We did get in at a good time 10 years ago. It was right before the boom. You know?
Thank goodness.
They're putting up a neighborhood. Man, for years I kept saying, I hope this guy doesn't sell this ranch. And they sold it last year. They're putting up a subdivision a quarter mile down the road from us. I heard that all the lots were like pre-sold. There's probably going to be like 50, 60 houses here. Traffic's bad enough. We live in Florence, Montana. We have one traffic light. It's bumper to bumper all day long. The show Yellowstone has ruined the Bitterroot Valley. I don't care what anybody says. You might love the TV show, but it's ruined Western Montana. So thank you, Kevin Costner. This neighborhood, they're tiny lots. They were all pre-sold, and someone just told me this week that the house is like a big lot over here is like a third of an acre, and they're going for $600,000 to $900,000, and they're building houses like every 10 days there's a new house up. It's just cookie cutter,
That is insane.
It's crazy.
Just
insane.
For the lot. That's the price for just the lot. Or
well, that's the lot with the house, and the house is probably a 2,000 square foot, 3 bedrooms, something like that.
Yeah, a standard house for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, contractor quality. So I mean, they're putting them up really fast. We have some equity built up from living here for a decade, but what would we do with it? Where would we go? We couldn't afford to
resell and rebuy in Montana.
Sell and rebuild or anything. There's no way we could afford that. It's nuts.
Gosh, every once in a while I get a wild hair and I'll go on Realtor, I'll go on Zillow, and I'll type in like Sheridan, Wyoming or something. I'm like, gosh, realistically, you take the value of any reasonable house in our region of Illinois, and you're basically multiplying it by times 3 if you take the same house and dump it out there. And it's just like, I just don't understand. Is the job market that white hot where it's able to compete with the difference? And I just don't know the answer to that question.
If this COVID nonsense has pushed people out here away from cities, maybe that's part of it. I really don't know. I'm sure that the price per square foot for new construction is probably tripled or quadrupled out here in recent years.
Gosh.
Case in point, we got a letter a few days ago in the mail, a typed letter from a couple. I think it was a California couple, and it was addressed to me and my wife, and I'm sure they sent them to everybody in our neighborhood, basically like pleading with us to sell our home. They said, we desperately want to move to Western Montana. There's nothing available. We found your house on Google Earth or something like that, and they said, we'll pay cash, we'll pay market price or above, and you could have like up to 6 months to move out. We just want to get there sometime in the next like 6 to 12 months. Would you please sell your home?
Wow.
That's like 3 or 4 days ago.
That's
It's
incredible.
nuts. It's crazy. We were fortunate to pick up the lot beside our home probably 7 or 8 years ago, and it's almost every week someone will pull up and ask if, hey, who owns this piece of dirt? And I say, oh, we do. Oh, can we buy it? Can we put a house here? I want to buy this like today. I'll pay cash. And I'm like, no, I don't want to sell it. I want a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah.
It's crazy. We threatened to cash out, sell this place, and move to Africa. So if we do, I'll give you a heads up. I'll give you a smoking deal on a house in the Bitterroot Valley.
Oh man, based upon what you're saying, it would be a pretty good investment for me because in 5 years, shoot, at this rate, Montana real estate could be double what it is now.
I don't know how it could. We've been saying that for like 5 years. I don't know how it could possibly be any more cutthroat, competitive. I don't know if interest rates are bound to go back up. I would think. I mean, something's going to. The brakes have to get pumped at some point. You would think.
You would think. I am not an economist or anything like that, but I would think there would have to be a logical equilibrium before we're snapping the metaphorical straw over the camel's back here on this one.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's got to be some places left in Wyoming, maybe Idaho. There's got to be some lesser known places that the locals are probably they're doing their very, very best to keep it quiet.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be a few little places. I mean, they call Montana the last best place. Maybe it is, I guess comparatively speaking, as busy and congested as Missoula's gotten, it's still, it beats most other places. I was on a fishing shoot in Galveston last week, and I was driving through Houston, and Houston's got to be the worst traffic that I've ever personally driven, and it was terrible.
Yeah, Houston and Atlanta, those are my top two worst I've ever experienced as well.
It was terrible. It was like a 5 or 6 lane highway, 60 miles an hour. I'm doing close to 90 miles an hour and 60, and I'm not keeping up, And I was thinking, man, I really miss the traffic in North. It's called North Reserve. It's kind of the main artery through Missoula,
Mm-hmm.
and it's poop. It's bumper to bumper all day, every day. And I'm sitting in Houston traffic thinking, man, I really miss the North Reserve Missoula traffic. That's how bad Houston was. So
yeah.
I guess my point is as bad as we feel like Montana's getting,
it could be worse.
It's still way better than most places,
Okay, fair enough. Sorry about the side tangent. Back to question 4.
No problem.
Would you rather eat wild turkey breast or elk steak for dinner tonight?
Elk steak, hands down, all day.
That didn't take you very long.
No.
The next one, this is an interesting one. I am going to judge your character very harshly depending on your answer, so know that this is the most important question of all of them. What's your favorite fast food place?
Ooh, fast food. I try to avoid it, and I'm not just saying that. I really do.
But what if you had to?
If I had to, like if I'm at an airport or something and it's get a quick meal kind of situation,
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably looking for a Five Guys. I like their burgers.
Okay. Now I'm going to make you pivot back to a Midwest fast food place because I feel like there are becoming more and more Five Guys, but looking at the traditional Burger King, McDonald's, Taco Bell, Arby's, Wendy's, Hardee's, all of those kind of rolled in there. Which one of those are you picking?
I think I'm picking Arby's.
Interesting. I was hoping you were going to go Taco Bell. That's what I would pick. I freaking love Taco Bell.
T-Bell? I can't.
I love it.
I ate so much Taco Bell in college. I think that.
Oh, I still eat it.
Could do it.
Oh, I still eat it.
What's that?
I still eat it. It's terrible for me, but God, it's so good.
You'll never digest it. I mean, and this is in no way meant to sound like condescending. Me personally, I just can't do it. Like I like Arby's roast beef. Wendy's is okay, but I like the meats. I like Arby's. I like the roast beef.
And they have some pretty good curly fries at Arby's too.
They do. Those are pretty strong. Yeah, for sure. Chick-fil-A is a strong contender, and I think it's because we don't have one. Well, I think there's one in Kalispell and maybe one in Butte, and I heard we're getting one in Missoula, which it'll probably take me a year to venture down there and get in line, for a chicken sandwich. But I do like their food. I like the company's values as a Christian company.
Yep.
I like Chick-fil-A a lot, but again, it's because it might be a scarcity issue. We don't have one here. So if you ask me a year from now, I might say Chick-fil-A if we get one here to Missoula.
Okay. Your next question. This is a tough one. Tough one. If it meant keeping your career in photography and the outdoors, would you rather lose your non-dominant hand? So are you right-handed?
I am.
Okay. So that means saying bye-bye to lefty, or your dominant foot. Which price would you rather pay to keep your career in hunting photography?
Wow. That wins the prize for the most random question I've ever been asked.
That's
Again, my
what we're all
choices
about.
are lose my left foot or my left hand.
Your left hand or your
Yeah.
right foot to keep your job. Which one of those would you rather part ways with?
Man, I think I would rather lose my hand.
They'd call you Nubs, the one-handed
They-
photographer.
They would, but I don't care what people think about me. I'm at the age where I don't care what people think.
That's fair.
But I mean, without my feet, it's gonna be tough to hunt. It's gonna be tough to spot and stalk. Sometimes when you're photographing wildlife with a telephoto, like a fixed, like a 500 or 600, your only zoom are your feet.
Yeah.
So I think I need to stay mobile.
So you would rather say goodbye to the hand?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, sir. I think so.
Okay.
Yep. I'm gonna go with that.
All right. I like that answer. It
And
makes
I can
sense.
still eat a Five Guys burger with one hand.
Yeah, right you are. So as we get to the end here, John, is there anything that you would like to add other than I want you to plug yourself really quick? You mentioned your website one time, but I want you to mention it again. And then where can you be found on social before we get off here?
Yeah, I'm a reluctant social media guy. I don't tweet. I've been Facebook sober for like 10 years. I absolutely despise Facebook.
Yeah, it's the
I'm only
worst.
on Instagram. What'd you say?
Facebook's the worst. I'm really looking forward this summer. That one of my main goals is to tidy up my loose ends on Facebook and then exit that. And I'm not a Twitter guy either, and just be only on Instagram. So looking forward to that.
I will not join the metaverse. Meta in Hebrew means death, and so I'm hoping that when Facebook changed their name to Meta, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, and they're going to die. I hate Facebook. So there you go. But I'm on Instagram at John Hafner Photo.
Mm-hmm.
My last name is Hafner. It's not Hefner. It's Hafner with an A. At John Hafner Photo, and my website is johnhafner.photography.
You heard it there first, everybody. So go and follow him on Instagram. I promise you are not going to be disappointed. Like I said, my front-running wildlife photographer right here. So I wanted to say thank you again, John, for making the time today. I know that you are busy, and like you said, a bunch in your podcast here. Always focused, always working, always hustling, and I want to be respectful of your time. So before we get off here, I just wanted to say thank you. And is there any last words that you would like to leave the listeners with today?
Well, man, just thank you for your time and for your interest in talking to me. I appreciate you entertaining my ramblings. If you want to come out next fall and photograph buck Norris or some elk or some whitetails, man, you've got an open invitation. Come on out. We'll put you on some big animals to photograph if you want to.
I might take advantage of that someday.
Yeah,
so
but,
I appreciate that.
But yeah, no, I appreciate the chance to share and talk, and I always love to hear from other creatives. If anybody has any questions, or by no means, like I said, do I know it all? I'm learning like everybody else, and I always feel like my best work is yet to come. But if I can ever help anybody, please reach out. I'm always happy to share and talk to other photographers.
All right, sounds good. Well, enjoy the rest of your day here. Hopefully you'll get through that big stack of photos, and I will talk to you here really soon.
All right, man. Thanks again. I really appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And again, that was John Hafner. Like I said, one of my personal favorite photographers in the industry. Episodes coming up in the future. Lining up Corey Jacobson has been a challenge, but we're going to get it done in April, so that's going to be awesome. Chris Hood is coming on soon as well. And additionally to that, our turkey season starts on Monday. As this is being released, first season is happening in Illinois, so good luck to everybody that's out there with a turkey tag in your pocket. One last little announcement before we leave. The Last Breath launch party is soft booked for the Adler Theater in Davenport, Iowa for Friday, August 5th or Friday, August 19th. I'm still waiting on quotes for building rentals for both of those days and seeing how they differ, but we're going to pick one of those dates. Again, we're moving it to August because we thought it would be better to get it a little bit closer to deer season, to really get you guys even more jacked up and really be able to put on a good show. We've got lots of great episodes that we are going to be showing at that launch party this year. So if you know a friend who hasn't been before, this will be our 7th launch party. In fact, that's kind of crazy to say out loud. But if they have not been yet, make sure that they know what they're missing out on. And until next time, we will see you. Thank you again for listening to the Last Breath Huntcast and to John Hafner's story. Make sure you go follow him on social because he is absolutely awesome. Till next time, don't waste it.